Welcome to Beaver Tracks, a damn good podcast where we bring you inside the world of Oregon State and share an inside look at Beaver Nation. I'm Kaylene McLaughlin, an admissions advisor here on our Corvallis campus. Thank you all for joining us today. Our guest on today's podcast episode is going to be the lovely and talented Emma Nichols. Emma, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. Thank you for being here. Would you just tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm so happy to be here, Kaylene. You and I go way back, and we'll probably talk about this more, but I can't believe that it's been this long since we've been able to really sit down and kind of go back through our histories together. So
right?
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
So yeah, I can talk a little bit about, where I've come from and all. So I am currently a senior here at Oregon State. I'll be graduating in just a few weeks. So very exciting. So I'm originally from the California Bay Area. So I grew up right outside Oakland. And I lived there for about 13 years, very urban lifestyle. And then my family pretty quickly, after my 7th grade year ended, we just moved to Corvallis. We had been looking for a different space to, grow our family a little bit more. And my parents decided that Corvallis was just going to be the right next spot to do so. And so I really was not expecting all that I really kind of came to uncover around here. And so I'm so grateful for it. But yeah, so I took my 8th grade year through my senior year of high school. In Corvallis, I was a Crescent Valley Raider, so go Raiders if anyone's listening. But with that as well, I graduated during COVID as well. So I graduated in 2021, and that was a really big, time during the pandemic.
Yes.
Where things got a little wonky, especially things like college admissions. And so I definitely have a little bit more of a non-traditional path, but I'll be excited to talk about that more today.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I'm excited to break it down with you, especially because me also being a Bay Area girly, growing up and then transitioning to Corvallis, but through college, but I love being in Oregon.
Don't even get me started.
I love here. We could talk a whole episode about just how much we love Oregon.
Yes, it's like the East Bay to Oregon pipeline.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, the ties. I want to talk to you more about kind of the program that you've been a part of for the last 4 years, especially now that you're graduating, kind of a good time to reflect on all you've been a part of.
For sure.
And I know you've also kind of the first of this batch of students for your particular program. So if you kind of want to dive into that, break it down a little bit more.
Absolutely. So before I do that, I actually do want to come to something that's really important to me. I was mentioning, my path into college.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I think that's a really big part of who I am. And I think sometimes now 4 years later, I forget this big chapter of my life that I've, went through, and it really caused me to be ready for college. So kind of breaking that down a little bit more. So when I was in high school, I was really passionate, of course, about music. I'm getting my degree in music, and I'll talk more about that in just a minute. But the big thing for me is when I was going through high school, we have to take a foreign language. Everyone pretty much has to do that. And I remember specifically that my mom, I told her that I wanted to take French. And she was like, no, you should take Spanish, because where are you ever going to use French around here? And in my mind, and we have a great relationship. But in my mind, I was like, I'm going to prove you wrong, Mom. Yeah. And so I decided to start taking French classes. And I mean, it was just an amazing process. I had the most amazing teacher who no longer works at Crescent Valley, but shout out to her. Katie, you are absolutely the most amazing professor on the planet. And she really instigated this passion for French that I have. And the way that I would go through her courses, she just put so much passion and so much time and energy and individual care into the courses and the students themselves. Yeah. It felt more like we were coming to a place. It wasn't like you were just coming to school. It was like she really built a community in our classroom.
I love that.
Yeah, it was amazing. And so that really helped me find that, beyond music, I actually am really passionate also about this language and this culture. And so as I took those classes, I really started to want to maybe go travel more. And I had never left the United States until I was 18. So I was pretty sheltered in the way of I'd never really traveled that much. And I couldn't envision what that would actually look like for me.
Yeah.
But then COVID happened during my junior year. And that was a really hard time, of course. Everything stopped. And especially with music and theater, no performances were happening.
Right.
And so that was a really big stop in my life. And all of the things I was passionate about pretty much stopped happening.
Yeah.
And that was a really tough adjustment for me. And something that actually helped remedy that was I continued to take Zoom French lessons with this amazing professor. And I say professor, but she was, my high school teacher. Either way. And so she had just had a son. And so it was a fun way for us to connect where she'd be at home taking care of him. And we would do Zoom lessons and we would just speak French and go through different worksheets and practices. And we built this, again, a stronger connection through that. And she really reminded me why I wanted to go and get out a bit more, you know, especially coming from, you know, even though I lived in California, we still lived in a pretty small town or smaller town. Yeah. And so I always kind of grew up in these like middle-sized ponds where I was like, yeah, I'm okay with this. And then while I was taking these Zoom lessons and I started getting, you know, applying to colleges, unfortunately, I was getting rejected from a lot of programs, and I had great grades. I was really passionate about this music and, you know, performing in musical theater especially. But I was getting rejected from these programs for various reasons, mostly because we went from live auditions to video auditions, and I wasn't ready for that. It's a whole different field. And it was really a big blow to the ego because it feels like this sense of worth. Oh, 100%. You know, that all of a sudden these people don't know you, but they're looking at a piece of paper and watching a video of you and going, yeah, she doesn't have it. Yep. And that just was so difficult for me to tackle at that age. You know, I never imagined. And it was so impersonal. You know, you're not meeting the people auditioning you or anything. Or
you're not getting to be actually face-to-face. There's not that interaction.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was really hard for me. You know, I'm a very face-to-face person. I love building connections and having these conversations that, you know, create that depth and build some sort of connection there. And it just wasn't happening during COVID. So I felt very unfulfilled in that way. Yeah. And so during my French lessons, my professor actually had told me that she knew another teacher up in Salem, not about, 45 minutes north of here, that started this abroad program, this internships abroad program. And basically what happened is I hopped on an informational night with them just on a Zoom call, and I started hearing more about the program. And basically they send students to a K through 12 school in France. Yeah. And they are an assistant language teaching assistant. Whoa. So basically you would go for 6 months to a year, and you'd have a chance to get involved in a school, be an assistant teacher there in the English classes, and, have other responsibilities, etc. But I heard about this program, and at first I thought there's no way I could do something like that. Right. Yeah. And then the more informational nights I went to, the more I kind of built my application for it, just for, fun, because I had nothing else to do at the time besides do my online classes to graduate high school. My mom and I both say, literally, it was like we hopped on that first informational night maybe in February, and then in August, boom, I had my plane ticket, bought my first visa, had, all my passport stuff ready to go, and I was on my way. It was just crazy. Yeah. And I won't go too in depth about the program because I highly encourage folks to check it out. It's Andago Internships Abroad. Okay. But with that as well, the experience just changed my life. And again, with the whole COVID thing, I really was not ready to come to college. And it feels like you have to, the way people talk about it is it's such a big, especially in American culture, it's such a big pipeline of you graduate high school, you go straight to college. In more of a niche, path that I want to take with music and arts, it doesn't always have to be that way. Yeah. And I think I forgot to kind of ask about that when I was growing up and ask about that in high school. Like, hey, this is my path. Even if I don't know, maybe my counselors at school don't have the same, understanding of what I want to do. Right. How can they connect me to different paths where, I can feel fulfilled in that way? So this path helped unlock different skills for me this whole internship. So I just spent a year in Bordeaux, France, the southwest region of France, and I taught English in a school. I worked about 20 hours a week, but then I got, so much extra free time to go explore and see the town and everything. So it was just a life-changing experience, and I'm currently a brand ambassador for their program as well, just because it was just such a positive experience. And so I really do mention this mostly because I want students to know that, there's nothing wrong with taking a break. Taking a gap year can be so beneficial, and especially when you're doing something, again, not to toot my own horn, but when you're doing something like this, it wasn't just wasting time. And people, I think, have this idea of a gap year being like, okay, you're just, kind of floating around, figuring out what's next. It's not like that. A gap year is always going to be something really guided and intentional. Yeah. And I think I really want to mention that just because that was a big part of what my path to college became. Yeah. And I don't think I ever would have, I never would have come to college if I hadn't have had that time to do something so different and build those different skill sets. And then I felt ready to come to college, if that makes sense. So
definitely. And I feel like since music itself is such like a non-traditional path, like it's not like you're an engineer going to school, learning your skills and then getting a job. Yeah. To, like, that's a pipeline. Yes. Whereas like music is an art. Yeah. You don't have to go to college for that, but there's like resources for you too. But it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to be on that same pipeline as everyone else. Like it's very different. So that's really exciting that you're able to take that time and like, just even like, I feel like getting to go like abroad is such a cool opportunity. Like no matter how old you are, like I'm I've never been out of the country. I'm doing 2 international trips this year, which I'm very excited for.
That is so exciting.
But it's definitely something that I wish I took advantage of in college, because I was in college during, like, I graduated 2020. So like that first year of college was still pandemic. And then by the time we brought back study abroad, it was just kind of like, well, I already have like most of my credits. I don't really know. Like, it doesn't feel like it's going to work out right now. But I love that you're able to do that and like be able to kind of see your path a little bit more. Like that's super exciting.
Yeah. And, you know, it's funny. During my time during this internship, I realized that I actually didn't do any music, basically at all. I would listen to music, of course, like we do on daily, right? Always on my Spotify.
Yes.
But I wasn't performing. I wasn't taking voice lessons. I did help out with the kids choir at my school, which was really cute. But besides that, you know, I had to rebuild my identity from the ground up, because I was not the music girl. I wasn't the theater girl. I was just the American. And they were like, bring what you are, who you are to the table, and we'll work with you on that. And so I got to build different skill sets, because the preconceived notion of what I've always had, like what I do as who I am, no longer existed. And it was, okay, now you get this clean slate to create who you want to be.
Kind of stripped it away.
Who do you want to be? And so that really taught me, actually, by stepping away from music, it taught me that I wanted it even more. And so that's why I decided to come back to Oregon State. And so when I was applying to college, like I mentioned, I got a couple rejections that were really hurt, but Oregon State was not one of them. So I'm very grateful for that. Yes, exactly. And I think it's funny because, again, Oregon State is not known for music whatsoever. I mean, maybe you've heard of our music education programs, but for the most part, we are a level 1 research, university. And so we're going to have our engineering be really fortified, our forestry #1 in the nation, those kinds of things. Those buzzwords are the big ones you hear about. But it's really interesting to me that students don't know that we have this really amazing music program.
It's kind of a sleeper group.
Like, yes, it is. Yes, absolutely. And so I think the big things that I would highlight is the staff. When I was applying to OSU, and even throughout before I was even applying to OSU, in like my sophomore and junior years of high school, I competed a lot in high school in music theater and classical competitions. And the faculty from OSU would come and, kind of scout us almost as if we were, like student athletes. And they would just come and be there for our performances and really show that they wanted to recruit Oregon students in that way. Beautiful. And of course they have outreach to other not countries necessarily, but states and stuff. But it was really important to me that wherever I go, I felt individually cared for and individually supported. And especially if I was going to pick a smaller program, that it felt like, even though the program is small, that I could still grow through it with the help of that faculty. And so when I was being recruited to come here, it really did feel like they want me here. And it was that feeling of, I went through the whole scholarship process with them, and I actually was accepted to OSU, and then I deferred to do my gap year. And they were more than happy to defer me and say, we'll hold your scholarships, we'll hold your admission, we'll see you the year after. And so that was such a big part of the experience that people also don't know about deferment often, especially if you're, getting close to your time and you've already, you're going to come here, you're going to go to any university. Take advantage of the deferment process. If you're like, you know what, I feel like I know I want to go here, but I don't know if I'm ready for this. It's really such a special thing to be able to do if your, programs allow it. So anyways, but so then I started at OSU, and I am currently in our program. I'm getting my Bachelor of Music in Vocal Performance, Pedagogy, and Literature. Beautiful. And so that means performance, of course, is the actual performing of it. Pedagogy is teaching the voice. So it's like, the study of the voice, and then literature being the repertoire, learning composers, learning the music, again, Beautiful. The repertoire songs that have been created. And so it's really been an all-encapsulating degree, and it's been, again, very specific to the things that I love and the things I've always had passion for. Don't get me wrong, it has not been easy, because every degree is going to be challenging in its own parts. But because of that, I love it even more now, right? Yeah. It's that kind of thing.
You've learned that appreciation.
Yes. And I was going to say, do you feel like you had something similar when you went through your degree?
I think so, yeah. Especially because with me and psychology, like, I knew that my career path wasn't aligned with like being a clinical psychologist or like working in the realm, but like I knew I wanted to learn about people. And that was like, I loved learning how the brain worked and like how we have social interactions and, the way we treat people and the way we're like viewing the world. Like that's so interesting to me. And so then once I think it really all clicked once I added my minor in organizational leadership, because that's when I was able to see like, oh, how you run a business is very much similar to like how we interact with people. Like those are all connected. And it was really cool to see like a lot of my introductory like management courses were like applied psychology. And I was like, wait a minute, like, this is so cool. Like, it makes sense. Like, it was clicking. And so, yeah, I feel like that was super, like, all-encompassing. Once I started to, like, find, like, more of a career path and kind of, like, an end goal with where I want to apply psychology. Because I had, like, the things in my brain, but
you sometimes don't know how to get there until someone's advising you how to do that. And that's a big part of like the whole advising process and everything too, that I think people take for granted, or, you know, it's definitely a hit or miss when you come to college, how much you know about advising and all that process.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we could talk for hours about that. Of course. But I want to kind of get back into like the OSU part of things. And so you talked about, or you asked about a little bit more about my, music side of things here. So I'll mention that we have a pretty extensive music program for like a smaller or lesser known, I would say. It's not necessarily small. So we're pretty robust. We actually have multiple different kinds of degrees that you can receive in music in general. So technically, like I said, I'm getting my Bachelor of Music, but you can get a Bachelor of Music in a lot of different areas. So they offer degrees in music or a Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science. There's some variety there as well. But there's degrees in music production. We have multiple studios on campus, or even like in Portland,
and I feel like
people don't know about.
I feel like when I'm at events, students ask a lot about music production. And they're like, I don't think OSU has this, and I'm like, we actually do.
Fun fact. Yes, totally. Like I have friends in my own degree who do, you know, either dual enroll in multiple different programs, they'll do double majors, right? That kind of thing. But it's amazing how involved these students get. And again, people, you don't know what you don't know. And so that's why I'm so excited you invited me on today, because this is fun for me to be able to say, hey, little known fact, you know, you can get a degree in vocal performance at Oregon State University, you know, that kind of thing. So and so beyond the music production side of things, like I said, you can get degrees in performance. So that can be instrumental performance, voice performance. We also do have degrees in music education, which is a really strong program here as well. That's pretty well known.
That's a big one.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the most well-known here on campus. Again, my degree, the Bachelor of Music, or the Bachelor of the Vocal Performance, is pretty new. And so we're kind of coming through the program as, you know, making sure that we're still getting everything in track. But it's been really cool to be a part of the building of that program and seeing, you know, like I said, of course, there's going to be challenges with everything, but it's been great to be able to work with the faculty and say, hey, this is what has really worked and this is what hasn't worked as well. And to hear that there's response there, to hear that there's, you know, people who genuinely care and want to help build the program in a way that's going to positively impact not just the university, but the students and their futures. That's been, I mean, bar none, such an amazing part of it. And that kind of ties back into, you know, what I was saying about the faculty part of things. When I was being recruited to come here, I knew that they cared about me as an individual beyond me as a musician, you know, and what I could produce. And that's how I felt my entire time being in this program. You know, I've made some amazing mentors here, allies, people that really just care for me as a person and my well-being, and then who have also helped further my career so much. I mean, every individual voice student. So if you're studying music, if you're a music education major or a music or performance major or vocal performance major, you're required to have a voice teacher inside the studio. Shout out Amy Hansen, the amazing Amy Hansen. She's my voice teacher and she is phenomenal. She's had a whole career in what I want to do. And so she's able to bring that, you know, experience to us and then share how, you know, with her own experience and her industry contacts, how she can help get us, you know, to that next step.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's
kind of
really
like
amazing.
An additional advisor, but like specific to like voice, especially since that's like what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Like,
and that's what I think is so amazing, you know, and I hear about my friends talk about this in their degrees too. So it's not just that music, you know, has this, it's every program has, and this is what is so, I feel like every university has people specialized in this content, but there's something about OSU, man, that just feels so authentic. And all of these people really
feels like a deeper connection.
Absolutely.
Like, and I feel like through like different either faculty that I've interacted with when I was a student or even now, like being a staff member, like you can just tell how passionate everyone is about OSU and like going to campus events or like going to like different types of talks and things. Like you can just feel everyone is so passionate about the research that they're doing, the classes that they're teaching, just being a part of the OSU community. And I feel like that is so just really great to be a part of. And that's definitely, I agree, like something that I think stands us out from like the rest for sure.
Absolutely. And, I didn't expect that. That's kind of the big thing is, again, and I say this with the most love in my heart for OSU. OSU was my safety school, applying to college because I'm from here. Yeah. I didn't know if I wanted to stay in the same town. I felt the pressure of like, I should be going and doing like something different, something away, something more challenging. Yeah. Goodness gracious knows that I've had my challenges here, but in that way of it hasn't been like, no after no after no. Yeah. It's been, okay, I hit this block and people are there to support me to get around it or get over it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's been really important to me that I feel like coming to college and especially a four-year university, because this is the big thing is I was applying to conservatories, right? Yeah. More music, very music specific. Yeah. I realized that seemed like what I wanted at 18, right? When I was coming freshman in high school. That's when you're in high school. Driven to do. Yeah. Yes, exactly. That's what I was driven to do. And it's, when you're in high school, you're taking all these other classes, but there's one thing you really love oftentimes. And for me, it was music and theater. Yeah. And so that's why I was like, okay, I'm just going to go to school only for music and theater. Yeah. But then coming to OSU and not realizing how much else was out here, that's when I really put the pieces together of, this is why you go to a four-year public university like this. Because the things that I've gotten my hands into, Kaylene, I mean, the tour ambassador job itself provides so many of those connections. Oh, 100%. And I never took a college tour. Again, like I didn't think I was really probably going to college. I thought I was just going to kind of jet off to New York and, figure something out.
Be a big star.
Exactly. And hey, we're on our way. Yeah. But with that, it's important for me that people know, you come here and even taking a college tour, it can be very overwhelming. Yeah. But the goal for us, especially at OSU, is like, how can we tell you the things that we didn't know when we were applying? Yes. How can we share with you the secret hidden little things that make OSU so special and like I said, so authentic and so like a family and a community here beyond just a university where you're going to get a degree and then go. You know?
That's what I really appreciate about this podcast and being a part of that is being able to talk to different students, talking to students that are going through medical pathways, talking to engineers, like talking to all these different student types that have non-traditional paths. There's students that are transfers. You have people coming in with like college credits that they did in high school. Like there's people doing internships or just club organization. Like there's so many different avenues that you can take. And I feel like every time I interact with someone like at OSU, whether it's like new or just like an old friend, like getting connected with, I'm always learning new things about things students can get involved with on campus. And especially in my job, that's super important. So that way I can tell students when they ask me, is there a music production option? I'm like, yes, there is. And that's, and kind of going back to what I said earlier, there's such a passion with everyone and getting involved on campus. And it's such a cool community. Like, you just have to be there. You have to be here.
Yes, so come visit. And as you're talking, something I think is really important also to talk about is, I get that question on tour all the time of students who come and whether they're fresh out of high school or maybe they're a transfer student or maybe they already took a gap year and they're on tour. A lot of times we get asked, like, well, I'm blank, blank, and blank. Am I going to fit in here? Or like, am I going to find a community? Yes. Or, is this really the right place for me because I'm not a traditional student? Yep. I kind of think OSU's the best place for non-traditional students sometimes, and even like I consider myself that, I took a gap year and even though I didn't, transfer or I didn't, really do anything with academia in that gap year. I mean, I taught, but it was different. I
you weren't taking college credits.
Yeah, I was absorbing and learning in a different kind of way.
Yeah, and that's beautiful.
Right, exactly. Oh yeah, trust me. I could go on and on about it. But, coming back to college here, even on my first day, I was 19 and I was like, everyone here in my class is going to be 18 and I'm going to be older than them and it's going to be weird. Yeah. And then I walked into my first class and my best friend to this day, she had transferred from Southern Oregon University and was doing a music degree with me. And she was the first person I talked to. And she was like, oh yeah, I'm a transfer student. I was like, what's a transfer student? I'd never heard of that before. And so we talked about it. And then almost every one of our close friends that we made in that first year, just within our small program, was some sort of non-traditional student. Yeah. And I was like, this is such a, again, you don't know what you don't know. Right. So that was a moment where I had to be like, oh my gosh, this actually exists where people can do whatever at whatever point. And the fact that OSU accepts that actually encourages that.
Oh, 100%.
Is such a really crucial part of, I think, the application process and picking a university that, if you want to be in a diverse environment of people, know that, your university accepts and offers and encourages students, from those non-traditional paths and avenues, like you said, to come and join us here to build that richer community and that diversity.
Yeah. Because I feel like if you took like a handful of like OSU students and like tallied them up to like your traditional first year or like transfer, like you're going to get a whole bunch of different results.
Absolutely.
And even like for me, when I was like a first year student living on campus, like everyone I met in the resident hall was from like a different state. And it was like, whoa, I've never met anyone from Montana before. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, totally.
Like, it was so like cool that we just kind of have this like little melting pot of our campus, and then getting to meet students of different majors and from different areas. And it was so cool. And I definitely like love that about our school and our campus, because there's just so much going on.
And there's so much to unravel, And like I said, I keep repeating this, you don't know what you don't know. And I think that's a really big piece of advice that I give oftentimes, and I'll share another one in tandem with that. But the you don't know what you don't know is, a lot of times, fresh out of high school at 18, you think you know it all. And I thought I knew it all.
Oh, 100%.
Right? Like I thought, I'm going to move straight to New York. I'm going to be on Broadway for the rest of my life. And boom, my career's set.
Yep.
And then, of course, a pandemic happens, not once in a lifetime necessarily, but for me, it felt like a once in a lifetime event where all of a sudden everything stopped. And I was like, okay, so this is teaching me really quickly, if I couldn't sing or if I couldn't make music, what am I going to do otherwise? Right. Yeah. And that's where this amazing other opportunity with Andego came to be. And so I think that, students really should remember that while, you're the one picking the college too. Yeah. Colleges want you. And it's when you're applying, it can feel very much the opposite way of like you're begging them or you're, trying to represent yourself the best for them. But really, we're here to see if we can be a fit for you, and that's when I give my tours, it's important for me that students know, like, you are the coveted position here. We want to encourage you to be the best you can be. And if OSU's your fit, great, come join us.
Yeah.
But when you come to my tour, I'm not like, you better pick OSU or else, because it's not the place for everyone. I didn't think this was my place, and I'm so glad I'm here.
Yes.
But it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But what I also tell students, in the process, and this is kind of my in tandem advice with that, would be give yourself grace.
Yeah.
Because people, again, we come from all walks of life, and you never know what someone's going through, but the college process can be so intense, and it can be so overwhelming. It is a lot. Yeah. And especially when you're trying to compile a lifetime's worth of, information about yourself on just a sheet of paper, it can be really intimidating. But I tell students, there is nothing wrong with, again, taking your time to get here. Right? If it doesn't feel right for you, give yourself that grace, acknowledge that in yourself. Yeah. And, really work with people like admissions advisors, right? Like yourself, Kaylene, who are here to help advise students, not just to come to that specific campus, but advise them, hey, it sounds like this avenue might be better for you. Or, hey, we know this other university that has this really strong program in this. Have you considered it? Of course, we want students to come join us because we love our campus and our community here. Yeah. But what your job is really, in my opinion, is to help students advise students in whatever way is best for them.
Yeah. No, we do a lot. We try especially every spring we go on our Oregon Public University tour. And so it's all 8 Oregon Public Universities.
That's great.
And it's that kind of place where, students come up to me and are like, I want to be like an ultrasound technician or do something in that field. And you're like, have you heard of OIT? They're right across from me. All those little things, and making those connections even professionally to be like, hey, I know, especially when it comes to theater, I promote our program, but also I'm like, if students really want to get into the weeds with being in theater and in music, I'm like, have you heard of Southern Oregon?
Yes.
The
Oregon Shakespeare Festival. Again, there's so much out there. So. I'm so glad to hear that you do that, because I think that's important. And that's, I think, a really big thing for people to know as well. Like I was mentioning with the, you are the coveted position here, when you go to college, you should feel that support. And I think that's where I didn't expect to feel that here. I kind of just started college because, again, I came home for my internship. I wanted that next chapter, but I was really unsure of okay, is this really right for me?
Right.
But the more time that I've spent on campus and developing this degree, it really has proved to me that this is the right spot. And, I even considered transferring my first few years being like, I don't know, maybe I should go somewhere else with this and this. But as I kind of branched out of my degree and I branched more into okay, who do I want to be as a person? What kind of skills do I want to develop? That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Then I was like, wow, OSU has what I want to offer. And I've been able to even tap into, career advice from business majors or faculty and people who I'm not in their college, but they still want me to be in my best, set up for graduation and stuff. And I think that's been
everyone
really
has like
too.
Your best interest in mind. Yeah.
It's amazing. And it's so selfless.
Yes.
And I think that is something you often don't find. I mean, of course, we pay the tuition, right? Right. But it's in this way of like you're putting your time and energy and your money here. You're going to get something out of it.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've gotten out so much more than I ever could have imagined. I'll also shout out here, if you don't mind, the Counseling and Psychological Services program, the CAPS program here on campus. I've always considered myself, I love to journal and I have a lot of outlets for my emotions and stuff. But my sophomore year, I was going through some pretty hard stuff, just trying to manage all of my, capabilities. And I was taking, it felt like a million hours of rehearsals and choirs. And I had so much homework and, it was just having a social life at the same time and living in the same town as my parents. How to want to stay connected to them. It was just such a difficult time for me to navigate all that. Yeah. And so I got on the wait list to join our Counseling and Psychological Services program and meet with the counselor. And their program is amazing. And I actually am still currently going through the program with my same counselor. And it's kind of a more niche situation. But because of the work that I've been doing over the years that I've been with him, we both have seen how much being a part of this counseling has changed my life and helped me grow and acknowledge the skills that I built here and have gone through that growth with. And now I can look at it, we're kind of finishing up as I'm kind of finishing my degree as well. Yeah. We're looking at it from this perspective of, wow, look how much I've accomplished.
Yeah, look where we started. Look where we are now.
Exactly. Yeah. And isn't that amazing that I came to college and it's included in your student fees? Like that's really the reason why I went. I was like, I'm already paying for it, so I might as well go anyway.
Right? It's a great resource.
An option for students. Yeah. And I don't think enough students know about it. So if this gets one person to start going to CAPS, like that makes me happy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's things like that I think OSU, we're known for that engineering, we're known for that forestry and all sorts of stuff, but we're also known here on campus to our Beaver Nation, like we're known as a family.
Yes,
and
we are such a family.
And I think that needs to be really the front of all of this. Yeah. I come on here and talk about my experience in such a positive light. Of course, I've had challenges. Of course, there's been, trials and tribulations, but that's what makes the experience so gratifying too, is having, going through those and yet having someone there always supporting me through that as well, whether it's with CAPS, whether it's with my voice, program, everything like that. I don't know. I really can't stop raving about OSU. Right? So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, of course. We're really happy to have you on the podcast, especially because we've had episodes about like marching band and stuff, but and that is a big aspect of music on our campus, but not a lot of people know the in-depths of those music programs. And so I'm really happy that you're able to share with us today about all those different opportunities, because it's not something we're known for, but the pocket on campus is so strong. And I think we have so many pockets like that, where it might be a smaller cohort overall, but that is a tight knit community and they're getting just as many research opportunities and internships and real world experiences as, our thousands of engineers. Those are comparable experiences across the board. And I'm really happy you're able to share with us today, because I think it's an untapped pocket.
Absolutely.
And I think the more we're able to kind of talk about it and share those different programs from student experiences, the more we'll able to get students involved.
Yeah. And I'll say the one other thing I was going to mention is, as you're saying that with the untapped pockets and everything is, I definitely, especially, I think I fit the bill for what you'd expect of a music major. I'm very talkative, I'm loud, and I love that about myself. I'm acknowledging these qualities. Thank you, CAPS. But with that as well, I feel like coming to this university, I definitely felt at first like I'm at a disadvantage because I don't study something, I'll be honest, I used to think what I study isn't as important as engineering or forestry, things that are going to change the world. And then as I've gotten into my degree, not only within my school has that mindset so shifted, because there is a place for every liberal art and there's a place for every sort of thing that seems maybe a little, I can't think of the right word, but something that seems more frivolous is what I was going to say. Yeah. But really, music has transcended generations.
And I mean, it's so powerful. And when you, because I wanted to talk about this a little bit more, but you at the opera, seeing you at the opera, I was in tears. It was so, and that whole the whole performance from everyone, like everyone killed it.
Yay,
everyone was doing amazing.
Much.
But like and it was also just like seeing you perform was so just like, she's doing it. And like your voice is so beautiful. And that was just like, it like music is such a powerful tool. And like, it's so amazing to like, we need musicians and artists like, and that's another thing I like about OSU is our tie between like, we love STEM and we love art and we love bridging those gaps together. And that's just like one of the millions of cool things about our campus.
Well, especially if you know about our Prax building. So Patricia Valley and Research Center for the Creative Arts, you know, so many people have heard about it. Yes, shout out. Because this has been an amazing part. And actually, just last night, they announced their 26-27 season. So exciting. I was doing my
morning stroll this morning. I was like, I'm very excited.
I know. I think I was heading to a class yesterday afternoon on the way. But I saw the big event that they put on. Oh my gosh. That lobby. I mean, everything about that building is phenomenal. But
their new lobby is so amazing.
The projects that they put on there and the artists and residencies, you know, all these things that, you know, really involve the students in what that building does. And even myself, like I've performed in that building. My senior recital will be in the theater there. It's just amazing that they really, not only are we an interdisciplinary space where we're mixing STEM and arts. I like to call it STEAM, right?
Yes.
But we're also involving those students in this space where we're also having world-class performances.
Yes.
You know, and so it's this feeling of students are being taken seriously from the get-go. And I really have been so in awe of the Prax staff and the administration and how they've run this amazing facility. You know, it's brand new as of 2024. And so we're only a couple years in, but they've already cultivated such an amazing culture of, you know, this intermixing of, like you said, genres and, you know, affiliations and experiences.
It's so cool.
It really is. And I think that's, you know, every kind of college town's going to have something like that. But Corvallis, man, like I don't know what happened, but they put some magic in that building for sure.
Yeah. No, that's a really special one. Well, that kind of like brings us to our time today. Thank you times 1,000,000 for chatting on the podcast with me today. I greatly appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Of course. So thank you to everybody for watching Beaver Tracks today. I hope you enjoyed the episode and learning a little bit more about our music program here on campus. Feel free to catch us in the next episode. And yeah, thanks for watching Beaver Tracks.
Go Beavs!